3, 2,
Today's presentation is going to be over the Cambridge English Language Assessment, particularly Key for Schools exam. The Cambridge English test actually consists of more than just the Cambridge English Key for Schools exam. They offer a lot of other tests, and they group them in the categories of young learners, general English and for schools, academic and professional English, and business English. And the test that we're focusing on falls under the general English category. And under this particular category, there are also many different tests. You have young learners, English to speakers of other languages, skills for life, Key and Key for Schools, which is basically the same exam. It's just that the Key for Schools tends to be more geared towards school-age children. Preliminary for schools, first and first for schools. On the website it says basically that anybody of any age can take any of these tests. The Key for Schools test is the one we're focusing on. It can be a paper-based test, and it can also be an online test. The Key for Schools test is, as I mentioned, geared towards older elementary and secondary students. The basics of the test is to motivate school-age children. For those who pass the test, you will get a certificate. And if you pass the test, it shows a mastery of basic English skills in communication. Some of the skills they measure are understanding and using basic phrases and expressions, being able to introduce yourself, answering simple questions about personal information, interacting with English speakers who talk slowly and clearly, and being able to write short, simple notes such as emails or in postcards. The passing level of the test is the A2 from the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, also known as the CEFR. This is a framework for learning, teaching, and assessment of foreign language proficiency. If you look where I have the arrow pointing, you'll see that the passing level is A2, which falls under the basic user category. The other colored areas are some of the other tests that Cambridge English offers, and the passing levels would be the different levels that are shown on the sides. Now, the A2, if you want to compare it to some of the American standards, you might be looking at, for example, the ACTFL chart, which is the American Council on Teaching of Foreign Languages. An A2 would be similar to a low intermediate level. Or if you were looking at the ILL chart, which is the Interagency Language Roundtable scales, which are used in federal agencies, it would be equivalent to a 1+. What is on the test? The test is made of 3 parts. The first part is reading and writing, which is 1 hour and 10 minutes long and has 9 different parts to it. On the test, you will do matching sentences to the different signs that you see, multiple choice questions about a reading passage, multiple choice responses to something someone says, matching question and answer section, spelling, close, and information transfer task, and then the last part would be a guided writing task. The listening section is 30 minutes long and has 5 parts. Some of the activities you will be asked to do will be multiple choice questions after listening to a short excerpt, matching a list of nouns to people while listening to descriptions about them, multiple choice questions about a conversation, and filling in missing words on a form while listening to people talking. The last part is the speaking, which is 8 to 10 minutes long and includes 2 parts. The first part is where the interviewer asks getting to know you questions, and the test taker responds. The second part is where a pair of students will be given prompt cards, and depending on the prompt card that they get, they will have to, one person will ask questions and the other person will answer. Now here's a sample of the reading and writing test, which comprises 50% of the test. The reading has 55 questions worth 1 point each, and the writing is only 1 question, but it is worth 5 points. Some of the things that you'll be asked to do on the reading and writing would be understand real-world signs, read and choose the correct word or answer, put a conversation in the correct order, choose the correct words to complete a text, complete an email or letter with the missing words, complete a form with important information, write a short email, letter, or postcard. And in this particular sample, they've given you a conversation, and it says on here, complete the telephone conversation between 2 friends. What does Josh say to Matt? For questions 16 through 20, mark the correct letter A through H on your answer sheet. So the example they give you is Matt says, "Hi Josh, it's Matt." So looking at the choices on your right hand side, you would see that C is the correct answer. Hi, you're calling early. So then the student would bubble in answer C. Now this is a sample of the writing section, which is worth 5 points. Read the email from your English friend Alex, and in the email it says, "It's great you can come to my house this evening to watch a DVD. What time can you come? Which DVD do you want to watch? What would you like to eat?" And the test taker would then write an email to Alex answering the questions using 25 to 35 words on their answer sheet. The listening section is 30 minutes long, and it's 25% of the test. There's 5 sections, 25 questions worth 1 point each, and the test taker is to listen for important information in short and long conversations and monologues, and listen and write down important information, including spelling words correctly. So here's a sample that I am showing here, and I'm going to actually play an excerpt from the sample test.
This is the Cambridge Key English Test for Schools Listening Sample Paper. There are 5 parts to the test. Parts 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We will now stop for a moment before we start the test. Please ask any questions now, because you must not speak during the test. Now look at the instructions for part 1. You will hear 5 short conversations. You will hear each conversation twice. There is 1 question for each conversation. For each question, choose the right answer, A, B, or C. Here is an example. Which is the girl's horse?
Is that your horse over there with the white face?
No, mine is the one with 2 white legs. Isn't she pretty?
Oh, yes. Standing next to the black one.
That's right. Would you like to ride her? The answer is A. Now we are ready to start. Look at question 1. Question 1. How many children went on the school trip?
Did you enjoy your school trip, James? Did everyone in your class go? No, 12 people stayed behind, so there were 18 of us. We had a great time. Where did you all sleep? We had small rooms with 6 beds in each one. It was lots of fun.
This conversation would actually be played twice on the actual test. Now we take a look at the speaking section, which is 10 to 12 minutes and 25% of the test. The first section, as I mentioned earlier, is where the interviewer asks getting to know you questions, and the test taker would then answer questions about their name, place where they come from, things about their family. And then with another test taker, the 2 candidates would then answer questions using the prompt cards that they're given. So this is an example. Here are two prompt cards. One test taker is designated candidate A and one person is designated as candidate B. So candidate A, there is some information about a skateboarding competition. Candidate B, you don't know anything about the skateboarding competition, so ask A some questions about it. Now B, ask A your questions about the skateboarding competition, and A, you answer them. Some of the questions that could be asked would be, where is the competition? Is the competition for children? What date is it? Is there a website address? And what can you win? After 4 or 5 questions have been asked and answered, the test takers will be stopped and new prompt cards will be given out so that the test takers can switch roles. So then basically this is another set of prompt cards. So this time candidate B will have the answers and candidate A will ask the questions. Some of the advantages, as you can see there are quite a lot, are that the Cambridge English tests are reviewed regularly. On the website it mentioned that they test, they use their tests on 150,000 test takers globally before they actually administer the test. Now this is probably not just for one test but for all of their tests together. Their tests are actually pre-tested before they're actually administered. Feedback is taken from test takers and teachers. Statistical data is used to ensure that the tests are reliable and valid, and a test taker can arrange to take a pretest, as the pretests are given globally. Pretests are scored within 3 weeks, a little longer for the written sections. It looked like on the website that the pretests are basically free, you just need to register for it, but you won't be able to get your test back. You'll get maybe a score, but you won't be able to look at the questions because obviously they're testing that test to administer it. When you do actually take the actual test, tests are scored by trained scorers and speaking sections are scored by 2 trained scorers. The total test score is the deciding test score. So for example, if you did really poorly in one section but really well in the other 2, you could still pass the test based on your cumulative score. Another advantage is that you can receive the results in 6 to 7 weeks after the test, and there are lots of support and prep courses for the Cambridge English exams. And something I didn't know that I learned is that Cambridge English is actually a non-profit organization, although the tests are administered through test centers, and those test centers probably are for-profit. And then the last advantage is you get a certificate, which is kind of nice. It's recognized in lots of different countries, although I'm not so sure about the US. So once you take the test and you get your results back, this is not the certificate, this is actually the results. So this particular test taker scored 88 out of 100, and that result is considered pass with merit. So if you look at the candidate profile, you'll see that this particular person scored in the good for reading and writing, in the exceptional area for listening, and on the borderline for the speaking part. Depending on the results, if you look a little bit lower on the right hand side, you'll see that if the test taker scores between 90 to 100, that's a pass with distinction. 86 to 80 is pass with merit. 70 to 84 is a pass. And then 45 to 60 is considered a level A1, and then anything lower obviously is not a passing grade. So what are some of the disadvantages? Well, the obvious disadvantage is that you need to be familiar with British English, as you could hear from the listening sections. There does, to me, seem to be a cultural bias. For example, the sample listening sections that I listened to, they use names such as James and Sophie. They didn't use names like Kareem or Jabril. So obviously I picture white British people. The results are not broken down in numbers. So even though you have an idea of how you did in each section, you don't know exactly your numerical score, how many you got right or how many you got wrong. The test is administered in many places in the UK, but not so many in the States. When I looked on the website, it looked like there were 105 test centers in the UK, and I called 2 test centers, one in Cambridge and then one in London. Interestingly enough, even though the website says that these particular test centers were supposed to be administering the Key for Schools exam, when I called, the test center in Cambridge told me that the lady I talked to told me that she didn't have enough people to take the exam, so they wouldn't be offering it until July. And then the test center that I called in London didn't administer this exam at all. It did administer the Key exam, which is, remember at the very beginning we talked about the same exam. It's just the Key for Schools is more geared towards school-age children. So anyway, so it may not be as easily accessible as the website would lead you to believe. And then in terms of the U.S., in California there were 3 test sites, Florida 1, Massachusetts 1, and Michigan 1. And when I looked at the websites for these places, they all turned out to be language schools. And it looked like you would basically sign up for the course to learn English, and then at the end of the course you would take an exam. I don't know if they would actually just administer the exam. And of course I don't know how much the courses would be. When I called the test centers in the UK, basically the tests ran anywhere from 71 pounds to 75 pounds, which is quite a lot for a test. So with that in mind, even though the test has great resources and would be a nice test to have and have a certificate for, I don't know that many children of school age would be able to afford, or rather their families afford to take the test. So in conclusion, a great test, well developed, a little bit of cultural bias, but maybe not as easily accessible.